G'day Mitchell, hello Susie. It's an honour to be talking to you from the beautiful Princess Theatre, where we have the chance to continue the most loved Harry Potter story for hundreds of fans and muggles alike from all over Australia. Applaudio! Silencio! Oh, not a bad spell.
This is actually my second time making this video essay. The first time was in one of my college classes, Film Authors, where we discussed the filmmaking of Del Toro and Christopher Nolan. We were given the task to do a bit of analysis in either a written essay or a video essay. Given that written essays are dumb, I decided to go the video route. Now, I'm not much of a fan of writing formally, and maybe that has to do with the forced writing I did in grade school, or maybe I'm just bad at it and not willing to accept that fact. Regardless, I find video essays a more fun and comfortable medium to work in. That, and I get to talk and make visual gags like this one. See what I did there? I cut the video and the audio, and that was a joke. Funny, right? Alright, enough tomfoolery. Let's get into the meat of this thing. Initially, when I was making this essay, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to talk about. This is my first real dive into this medium, but nothing was really sticking out to me. That is, until the release of Morbius and Sonic 2. Then I knew that the adaptation was the key to all my problems. One of them was a huge success, while the other was a massive flop. I'll let you guess which was which.
I don't know how you got back, but you made a big mistake coming here.
Oh, contraire, mon frère. The mistake was thinking you'd won.
These two films got me thinking, why do we even make adaptations, and why can they be so bad? Especially when the source material is decent, and potentially even good. For the majority of this essay, I'll be focusing on the first point because I feel like everyone knows why these films are bad, but I wanted to give my take on the subject matter considering that I am in fact an accredited IMDb filmmaker. As with all good essays, I began my journey with a bit of research. My first step was to go and witness the majesty of Sonic 2. It was an absolutely splendid film, one that I would have no trouble showing to my future children. Then I watched the tragedy that is Morbius, and it was not splendid. It wasn't even fun. I was disappointed in this because Matt Smith is my favorite Doctor, and yeah, I'm one of those guys. There are some obvious differences as to why one is good and one is bad that upon watching these films, you'll notice pretty quickly. Doing research on this topic outside of watching the films proved to be rather difficult. There wasn't a lot of information that I could find, so I did a bit of parallel searching and came across a paper entitled Film Adaptation of Literature, the Medium and Its Message. It was a thesis paper written by Heidi Roberta Elizabeth Carter. Although not comics or video games, some of the first adaptations that we saw in cinema were those with their origins in books. One of the first notable adaptations was Gone with the Wind, the book releasing in 1936, and only 3 years later, the film adaptation is released in 1939. From what I understand, not having seen the film and not having plans on watching it, the film is considered not bad. Nowadays, it seems like every film that is being released is an adaptation of something, and these films are being pumped out at a rapid pace. During the early days of film, pre-color and even pre-sound, the adaptation form was frowned upon. Negative criticism would float around filmmakers who dared do something of the sort, dared to do something different because apparently filmmakers were snobs back then, much like the purists of today's cinematic world. Carter states in her paper, though, it is hard to imagine that the two fields, though similar in process, would be so unkind to each other. Now, most filmmakers don't really care where the source material comes from. It can be an original script or a story that has already been told in a different medium. But Carter goes on to say that the purposes of written media and visual media are different. The written form was created to elicit intellectual reflection, and the visual form to harbor emotional reflection. This might be why adaptations are often poor renditions of the original work. Their cores and their purposes are different. It would be like trying to make a peach tree grow into an apple or an orange tree.
Ah, yes. But no matter what you do, that seed will grow to be a peach tree. You may wish for an apple or an orange, but you will get a peach.
George Bernard Shaw, an Irish playwright, had a few things to say about this. He thought the problem originated with the uniquity of film. Looking to other mediums to create a film was a crutch in his mind. He stated that the development of cinema must come from cinema, not the peripheral art of literature. As a filmmaker, this statement makes sense to me, because there are often limitations and there's a whole different slew of problems you have to work through, such as budget, location, time, scheduling. But these limitations create adversity, and through adversity comes the development Shaw speaks of. Restrictions nourish creativity, and that creativity breeds ingenuity. And this is how we make progress in film. That, and people want to experiment with the form, but you don't experiment with the film form based on the rules of other mediums, because the rules are vastly different. For example, theater and film. They are very similar, but they are different forms. Theater finds its roots in oration and serves as an active and immediate portrayal of the story that only exists in that moment. Film is derived from photography and has the ability to tear apart the fabric of its own reality and is highly visual. What you receive from combining these forms is a bit of mismatched and mismanaged media that can't focus or decide on what its purpose is. This is because that adaptation feels more like a translation than a recreation, as Andre Bazin would put it. The audience isn't getting what the author originally intended, so instead they have an interpretation, not the actual product. This is not inherently problematic. Interpretations exist for a reason. People may have seen or read a story that meant something to them, and they wanted to experiment with the pre-existing IP. This can be done well, but obviously can also be done poorly. Bazin says that there are three main types of adaptations, the first of which he criticizes intensely. He shames people who merely adapt a play by recording it. Many praise the Broadway musical Hamilton, but if we take Bazin's words to heart, then it becomes nothing more than a bad adaptation if you're watching it on Disney+. The second means of adaptation is one that borrows characters, location, and premise, but retains none of the emotional core that makes the source material unique. As a result, you get something along the lines of the 2003 film Cat in the Hat.
A monster? Where?
That could have gone better.
Truth be told, I actually love this film, but not because it reminds me of the book, but rather because it is nothing like it. The same can be said for the upcoming Winnie the Pooh project. But this does make the film bad in Bazin's eye, because the piece of media is no longer what it was supposed to be. It is tarnished. The third form of the adaptation is simply the good adaptation. It is very similar to the second, but it does in fact retain the emotional core of the source material. A stellar example of this would be Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I hope I said his name right. It is a beautiful film that retains the grandeur and mythos of the original novel while also representing similar themes of power, religion, and fear. Ironically, Dune was a blockbuster hit, a massive Hollywood success. The question then becomes, was it made for money or for art? It wasn't made for money like Jurassic World Dominion was. Hollywood has a tendency to reboot these franchises of our parents' generations in order to capitalize on that nostalgia factor of the once famed IPs of the Hollywood legacy. Kathleen Locke of Film Reboots, compiled by Daniel Herbert, uses one of those famed IPs, Jurassic Park, as an exemplar of this point. We have seen an entire trilogy of new movies that are okay, but look amazing, and are supposedly a ton of fun. To me, they look like a lot of money, impressive CGI, big-ticket A-list actors. I will say, Dominion has great sound design. But more importantly, a return of the original cast. This is why a lot of older people go and see these films. The USA is addicted to this nostalgia factor. People will do whatever they can to go see their beloved movie stars on screen again. And to be fair, I do too, but rarely is there a good time and a place for that. Locke says, reboots of creatively depleted, too expensive, or dormant film franchises are to blame for this nostalgia baiting. A horrendous example of this is all the Harry Potter media we've been getting. It began with The Cursed Child, a poor attempt to translate media into a form that J.K. Rowling has no experience in. But apparently, it was successful enough that we received another trilogy of film, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is nothing more than a poor imitation of what the original series was. These films also have almost nothing to do with Fantastic Beasts, but instead have everything to do with Albus Dumbledore. She killed him off for a reason. Don't bring him back like they did to Voldemort. Warner Brothers is not worried about creating a good film. Unfortunately, that is working. I hate to admit that I did in fact go and see The Secrets of Dumbledore in theaters. That being said, Jeff Bach of the same book says the following. This is an easy way for studios to link generations of fans together and continue to grow an audience, all without having to market and sell a whole new world. But this is where a bit of a moral conundrum comes into play. Are adaptations made primarily for money bad if they connect generations together? Are they a necessary evil? Unfortunately, I think the answers are no and yes. Generational gaps exist in families. That is simply the familial nature. The cultural differences can be set aside by these franchises that continue to be rebooted in order to help these generations connect to each other, which is an extremely important factor in familial health and development. Locke calls these films legacy-quels. She says that these franchises are infinitely renewable as long as they sell tickets. Maybe this can be a good thing, but only time will tell as future filmmakers approach the craft. However, just because it has a good result does not mean that we can sit idly by as cash cows are slaughtered. Instead, we need to hold these production companies to a higher standard. I know that's something everyone says, but that doesn't make it any less true. Let's take a retroactive look at one of the worst scenes to come out of recent adaptations so that we can really remember that some of these films are really bad. Simply put, the majority of the adaptations that we see in today's cinematic world are just bad. Not because they are adaptations, but because of poor filmmaking. The writing and direction are often the worst parts of these films. The people in charge, and potentially some of the key creatives, just do not care about the project. The best way to start making a better film is with a better script. It is very simple, but what I do not understand is why studios, with literal tons of money, are not willing to hire good screenwriters. When studios are looking to make these films, hire someone who's a fan, or at the very least someone who knows the source material. There are plenty of good writers out there who want to make a good film, and I know it's possible because we've seen it happen. The two Sonic movies that have come out prove this. Morbius, a movie released in the same month, is atrocious, and it's a perfect showcase of a studio throwing together a movie so they can line their greasy pockets with dough. Morbius could have been so much better than it was, but instead, Sony took the easy way out, looking to make a quick buck rather than taking the time to create something memorable. Thank God we at least got a decent Mortal Kombat film. The industry is littered with these films. Although good adaptations might be few and far between, they do exist. Don't get bogged down by the bad movies that are out there. Instead, look for the good films. In all the dust and dirt there lies a diamond. Good adaptations and legacy sequels do exist. So keep searching and pushing studios to make good films. See you next time.
It was just it.
We are right on schedule.
Everything that's ever happened to you
This is gonna sting, bitch!
has led you here. Fate.
That's a shit deal.
Oh, yeah!